Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And I'm happy here today from Washington State, Sharon Rolph. Hello and welcome, Sharon.
I'm glad to be here talking to Vienna today. Come on, Philip, let's do this.
Well, then I may disappoint you because the real Vienna experience should be snowing outside, but it hadn't been snowing for a couple of days. So, if it's a Hallmark movie in Vienna, it's always snowing.
Yeah, we haven't had snow yet this winter, so we're kind of fortunate that way. But usually every 2, 3 years we get snow.
We usually get a lot of snow.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much for coming to my podcast. I'm looking forward for this conversation because I think it will be a great one. And I like to start it with giving people a chance to make a small introduction to get the ball rolling, to a little bit introduce yourself to the audience, if you may.
Which is right on the Puget Sound. But then at 8 or 9 years old, we moved to a farm in Eastern Washington where we had to stack hay and milk cows and gather the eggs, that kind of thing. But I went on to college. I was a lifelong learner from a very young age. In fact, I skipped second grade. My mom had me drooling my brother and sister on their flashcards and, 3 plus 2 equals 5 kind of thing. And I thought, why just sit here, watching them work? And I thought, well, I'm going to pay attention. And so by first grade, I knew I was actually studying second grade stuff after the class, everybody went home. But I went on to get a master's degree in behavioral science. And what that does for me is I love to bring out the best in people. So, and I think it comes when we live from our soul, from our essence. And when it came my time to share my essence statement with the class, is that nobody's ever asked me to define my soul before. That's what it felt like. And when I'm living from my essence, I feel like it's a little bit like heaven on earth.
Right. So you're already put a lot on the table. Yes. Well, we only have like 50 minutes. And I know keeping it at 50 minutes with you is a challenge. So that's going to be the main job for me today because there's so many interesting things and there's a lot of work that you do. Uh, and maybe give us also another minute to tell the people the work that you're doing right now or how you were involved right now in the community. So what is your spiritual work that you're engaged so people have a better understanding when we start with the questions?
Well, my secret sauce, I want to teach people the same thing I learned in coaching class, which was to write our essence statement. I've renamed it to being your
Hello?
spark, what's inside your intrinsic yes, what I'm doing is mostly on podcasts, actually. I'm helping people use I like to inspire and encourage and help them have purpose, and my main goal, I guess, is to help tap into the untapped potential in retirees, because all this free time, things like untapped potential. And that really matters to me. And one of the best ways to do that is with my course, Discover Your Spark, Rekindle Your Joy. And it kind of looks like this. It's on the Great Discovery platform, but it's also on my website, effortlessvitality.org. And when I learned my spark or essence statement, I felt like it was like heaven on earth. It just fits me so perfectly because that's how God made me. And and that's where your potential and destiny is. So I want to help everybody know themselves better by understanding what's in their soul to be contributing to this world. Mm, What
Perfect. So I think we've definitely laid the groundwork for the big discussion these days. It's January. That's where we all are. That's the most authentic podcast we can make in January because we both agree in our pre-conversation that there is a huge crisis, a spiritual crisis in people being left out, older age people or really people who middle age even are totally left out from the spiritual world, spiritual development world, and there's actually very little. It's just always been neglected. Once you're out of Instagram, once you're out of the hype and the hip, it seems like a the whole forgotten group of people who have the times, the means, and most probably the questions more urgent than for many others. And no one is working with them. No one is taking care of them. No one is helping them since people have, I think it has a lot to do with organized religion not being as popular as they used to be. And so people are basically either you're part of a church or you're nowhere. And I think this is what we want to talk about a little bit, what needs to change, what needs to be done to give advanced people, not even older people, even advanced people, 50 and 50 plus, give them again chances and possibilities to develop their spirituality.
Yes, yes. And I had felt that as a kid, that I felt invisible my whole career. I actually wanted to be invisible as a kid because I felt like it would be safe. And there was a lot of sexual abuse going on in our home. And I thought, well, if I focus down, get good grades, be obedient, don't rock the boat, maybe I'd be safe too. And that pretty much did work for me. But then when I retired, a couple years into retirement, I realized that, oh, yeah, I think maybe I'm still feeling invisible. But I read a book by Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, a year ago. It's just a book called Together. And it was all about all kinds of ways that people feel invisible. And I've now kind of realized that feeling seen and heard and valued is what is a big lack in our society as having a place for seniors to fit in and still contribute. You know, all that untapped potential that's waiting for something to do. I met somebody on LinkedIn, well, actually at a retirement conference, that he made a documentary of how the Peace Corps started back when we were in our young 20s, and I thought, let's maybe it's time to do another Peace Corps assignment where we can feel like we're contributing, we have a place to fit in, and we are making a difference. What a wild thing and the fulfillment and meaning that comes from helping someone else have a better life is just priceless.
In my home country, we are having more and more of those social projects where they're building the, in America, you would maybe call it social housing, but it's just social housing for normal people. There's it's just the government providing some kind of, it's a complicated thing. But anyway, so there on the upper floors, young families are living. And the first floor is reserved to pensionists who basically still able to live alone. And the idea is, even if it's not the real grandmother of these kids, but this is specifically done for elderly people who want to get involved, who want to maybe a little bit take care or just want to be around small kids running in the garden. So they're creating this kind of a communities all over the country, and it's so basically the whole old concept is a my grandkids and stuff like that is just falling apart, and people are just trying to build communities and helping, and being needed feels good. Having a purpose, and even if you just watch outside that kids don't get hurt or whatever. I mean, it's a nice thing, right?
Right, right. I've never married and never had kids, and my retirement is very different because the grandkids are often pulling on your schedule. Come to my birthday party, come to my graduation. And I don't have any of that going on in my life. And I often on podcasts remind people to look around and see who do you know that's living alone and older. try including them in some of your projects or events because they probably would really appreciate it. The other thing is in volunteering, I highly recommend volunteering in return because that keeps you social, keeps you learning things. Just gotten through driving Lyft for a year to pay off a debt. And I thought, well, driving for the food bank sounds like a natural progression, you know? And at first I kept wondering, well, why are these people needing food delivered to them? And I thought, well, maybe they don't have a car, or maybe they're a caregiver and, can't get out, or maybe they're sickly themselves, and, little by little, I think one lady I figured out had a grandson who was deaf, and I'm not sure if she taught him at home or not, and another family, I had never seen a car in their driveway. Let's see, what was another one? Oh, a couple, sisters. I delivered to both of them, they're twins, and, um, I think they're somehow taking care of, incapacitated people. But one of the points I make in my volunteering course is that my mom had taught me when I was like 14 years old that when you help somebody else, when you're blessing somebody else with a favor or helping them out, you give less too. Oh, yeah, that does feel pretty good, doesn't it? If you wanna feel good, then volunteer, because times there's a sense of reciprocity that happens when you help someone else, just like me helping them blesses me. No, maybe they didn't help me directly, but somebody else blesses me because of my generosity, so one of my gals, Jackie, she this year, I had complimented her on her at the front door, there's a lavender plant, and I like to run my hands over the lavender plant to smell it as
Me
I'm
too.
approaching her door. Yeah. I started to say something about her plants, and she motioned over on the other side of the yard, and I thought, "Well, what's that about? Is there some more flowers over there?" No, she had I think a plum and a prune tree with fruit, ripe fruit, and she insisted I take some home. Well, that's not law of reciprocity in play, where she was now blessing me because I had been blessing her. And I just chuckled about it because it's so cool that we can bless each other and have a good relationship.
Maybe one of the reasons why spirituality is a complex issue, because obviously there is a kind of age appropriate uh, path to spirituality. Because you've mentioned a couple of times community service, giving, being wanted, being needed, uh, being social, and that goes very far away from the fancy yoga posing or from 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 some of the spirituality things that are now so popular. The crazy retreat somewhere on the coastline and the sunset, uh, helping food drives, being engaged in a meaningful way in your own surrounding sounds very different. I'm absolutely with you that if you want to talk about spirituality in an advanced life, you also have to start to understand which forms, techniques, which places are actually appropriate and meaningful to express this spiritual, that community, that personal development need. Because in every age, we have a need for development, but it must be done appropriate. Maybe you will say a couple of words on those thoughts, if you may.
Well, yeah, it reminds me that when I wrote my book, Fresh Courage in Retirement, Finding Purpose, Essence, and Fulfillment, I include on the back of every chapter some action items. And it might include some uh, links to some website that might help people find purpose. I wrote it in such a way that it's kind of a do it yourself to find purpose. Because as we get questions, pocket answers to the various questions, we might start seeing some some similarities, connecting the dots with things that, oh, yeah, I do remember enjoying that and how amazing that feeling was of being involved in stuff. So between recalling memories, so here's a way to get started. What are 20 things you love to do? How many of us can list 20 things we love to do? It helps us remember what we enjoy. And I think God wants us to enjoy life. I'm getting more and more convinced that our fun and joy is crucial to what God wants for us. So I still need to work on some of that. When you don't have kids around, fun doesn't come quite so easily as when there's children around, right? And you get to play with the kids. Um,
In
so
theory,
if they play with you, I think that when we align with what brings us joy today, we can plan things in the future that brings more of that into our life. So let's see. I'm trying to think of some. Oh, okay. So here's an example. Yeah, I've got two or three of these. I actually made about 500 of them, but um, worry is a misuse of imagination is one of my favorite. I got from a magazine. Our thoughts that go on in our mind. It's our ingenuity. But why spend all your thoughts on fears and worries when you could be genius? You could be the ingenuity that our minds can come up with is advancing. My point is that I love to sew, I love color, and I love words of wisdom. So on this art block, they're just the size of a postcard, but I would ask what makes me sing, what makes me cry, what makes me dream, what makes me excel, and what makes me different. They're questions that John Maxwell has in his leadership book. And these could, in fact, guide you to something that would be purposeful for you. Because what makes you sing is what makes you happy, What makes you cry might be what moves you to tears or moves you kind of your empathy is something that matters to you and is important. I did a class this morning with my loneliness group that we talked about how when your values don't align with your life actions, that your life becomes there's a mental well-being that's challenged when our alignment with our values doesn't line up with the actions we take.
please bring us a moment to, you said you had this morning a loneliness group. Can you bring us there for a moment? Is this like a center? Is this at your house? Is it online? Is it like 5 people, 20 people, mixed men, women, or is it just, you separated it? And how you come there and just bring us there with you, if you may.
Decided that I would step up and I would help solve loneliness and help heal the world. So I put together a online membership community that's is still free. Someday I will start charging for it, but we set up a website and we created some milestones to reflect on how did you get here and in loneliness and what can you do to move forward with becoming resilient. And so this morning I had a number of new people attend, probably 5 or 6 people that were new. I usually have about six that always come, and only one of them showed up today. One fella is in the UK who's blind, and I think he just turned 80. Another young man is in Malaysia, and so it's 2 o'clock in the morning there for him, and he's been real regularly show up. And today our topic was how do how does values affect mental well-being? And when I did my research, I was quite amazed at how much having your values will impact your mental well-being. And it's because if you're not, again, when you're not aligned with what's your truth, then it can be frustrating. About 6 months ago, I think it was, that I came across a saying that one of the biggest frustrations for people in life and is when they're not aligning their life with their values. A couple of my nephews have struggled with anger management issues. They don't know what their values are, I'm pretty sure, and they don't realize where that frustration is coming from. I need to teach them, but oftentimes they don't listen to family.
Important life rule. Don't listen to family. That's number one.
Maybe that's why I haven't gotten married. I want somebody that listens to me.
I would divorce tomorrow.
Oh, one right. Yeah. So there's some values that give us personal growth that actually help us grow personally and even transform. I mean, how many people live by the value of integrity? Man, I always want you to take my words to the bank. That's how important that is to me. But values are things that seem important to you. You may, as you're listening to a news report on the radio or TV, and may sometimes maybe it's come up and say, "What do you need to do something about that?" If you took just a baby step, you might actually be able to help solve that problem. One of my art blocks I have, I don't think it's here close by, but when you take the first step, you'll know what the next step is. Here's a good one for retirement. And that is, once you don't no longer have a business card and don't have a title and a team to work with, you forget who you are. Maybe you've convinced yourself you're not important or need to be listened to. Well, you still have your college education. You still have the people that you met over the years. Art Block says, "Have you forgotten who you are?"
Mm.
That's a line from The Lion King. I think one of the lions is saying to the young cub Simba, he knows that Simba's part of the royalty, and yet Simba doesn't seem to remember that. Well, you still have, maybe in high school you were a dynamite trombone player. You still might be a good trombone player if you got that instrument out again. Maybe you were an amazing pianist or artist, could paint beautiful things. You still might be able to do that. It just needs refreshing and brought maybe or practiced a little more. So it's amazing that we need so much help remembering what our dreams were or what we always wanted to be. We get busy putting the roof over our head and paying for our car and paying for our education. And, life becomes monotonous, the same over and over. But in retirement, we don't have to be that strong person anymore or that smartest person in the room. We just get to live from our heart. We get to live from our heart. It's a marvelous day when you can get paid to live from your heart. But in retirement, you're the boss now. You get to decide. And as you look at the various volunteer opportunities, there's assessments that you can take online that say, okay, if you particularly like sewing and you like helping people and you like fun things, you can figure out how to make fun quilts for kids that are homeless or that have chronic disease. There's people that make for people that have lost their hair and cancer, and there's all kinds of needs out there if we do our research and listen real close and ask others what they're doing to give back. They might inspire you to also give back.
Well, I'm getting a lot inspired in this conversation. I have to tell you, we, whoever we are, think about that's supposed to be spirituality. That's how it's supposed to be this, and that's how it's supposed to be that. And you quite a lot opened my mind today that every generation or every part of life has its own way to express spirituality and to grow as a person and to find happiness. And as young people have maybe traumatic childhood experiences they're still working on, or they're still searching for love or relationship and all of these things that motivate people into spirituality. And then comes the middle years where people maybe get diagnosed with cancer or things like that, or marriage breaks up. So people have all these traumatic middle years of experience, which drives them into spirituality. They have to overcome trauma or all of this. So there's another group of activities. And then the next one comes, and this is then loneliness, I think, not being used anymore and, feeling lost in don't know what to do with themselves. And it's not so easy to connect and to build. So that's then another part of that, right? And I think you contributed a lot to better understanding that if we want to work with elderly people and want to help them to discover the spirituality, be happy, we have to listen to them, first of all, of what's lacking or what they're actually missing, and not just come with our recipes that might work for someone young or someone like this. We really have to listen of what you actually need to find the happiness and the growth that you're looking for. Is that maybe a way to sum it up so far?
Yeah, Philip, one of the things for a long time, a strong sense of possibilities. And words like hope and courage and inspiration and possibilities, they're all words that invite the spiritual element into our situation, into our life. They, for years, got a subscription to the Guidepost magazine. And I'm such a positive thinker that one story was about a gal getting a traffic ticket by a policeman, and she wound up marrying the guy. I'll never forget a gal that had 2 or 3 kids already, and I think her husband had died, and she got such a strong sense that she was to go to McDonald's and get breakfast. Well, she was in the middle of making breakfast herself, but she couldn't get rid of this thought that she needed to go to McDonald's. Well, it turned out that there was a young man there with a couple of little boys, and they got talking and sharing and whatever at McDonald's, and they became a close-knit group of friends. I don't remember if she married him or not, but the possibilities can happen. The miracles that the angels and God are trying to tap us, and are you listening? There's something for you to do today. I remember my sister. That happened kind of to my sister. She had this impression to go to the Safeway store, the grocery store. She didn't need anything at the grocery store, but she went anyway, and she's parking her car. This lady walked in front of her. She said, "Well, that looks like Kareen." And, she apparently hadn't seen him for a long time. I remember something amazing that happened to Corrine in our church when I was growing up, and she had such a marvelous experience. My sister got into conversation with her, and she said, "Did you ever tell your kids about what happened in our church many years ago?" And Corrine hadn't shared that with her family. And because of Karen asking about that experience, it was almost miraculous.
Thank you very much for this. This conversation could last for hours, but we reached our podcast today. And I think we all got really inspired with the work that you're doing. And of course, we are impressed by your energy and by your motivation to start new groups and to go out there and to show the people that a lot needs to be done and can be done and should be done. And I think I'm definitely inspired after this conversation to listen better and listen more closely to help people the way they need help and not as much as I think they should be helped. I think this is something that I'm taking from this conversation, not to know so many things, to learn to listen and to take people's hand exactly from where they are and not make them come to me and give me the hand. So that's what I've learned today.
Thank you for having me, Philip. This has been a great experience.